Hello, fellow Meninacs. Welcome back to yet another Monday meeting, our very last one of the year. I cannot believe it. I feel like this year has absolutely flown by. Good to see so many of you out there. We are streaming live to Facebook today as well. And I look forward to having our very own Superintendent of the Year, Dr. Diana Greene, back with us as we recognize her for her accomplishment this year and also check in with her and see how this school year has really gone so far, this half of the school year from her perspective. She will be joining us at 12:30, which is why we're starting just a little bit late today. Of course, Zoom gives us the power to do this, and it's why I love this platform. But real quick, before we start our meeting, if we could please have Melanie Messer give us our invocation. Melanie.
Great. Let us pray. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to be of service to the youth of our city through Meninak. Thank you for equipping our city with the leadership of Superintendent Diana Greene. Thank you, Lord, for her spirit of excellence, her compassion towards our youth, and ensuring that no one is left behind. Thank you for calling her towards the field of education and administration. We pray that you would equip her with all that she needs to continue to lead our administrators, students, and parents through this pandemic while keeping her faith and steadfast resolve intact. As we close out a year like none we've experienced before and celebrate a holiday season that may be a bit more unusual than those in years past, we ask that you would guide us as instruments of your peace. Please grant direction that we may rather seek to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, and to love than to be loved. It is our prayer that we would be examples of you and in turn be an effervescent light to those around us. In your name I pray, amen.
Thank you, Melanie. Appreciate you handling our final invocation here of the year. I thought I would buy a little time while we wait on Dr. Greene to join us here. So I'm just waiting to be notified that that has happened. I thought I'd kind of recap this wild and crazy unexpected year I had as president of Meninak. You know, we started the year after the installation of officers with Rick Mulaney, who spoke to us about the election that would happen later that year. And then we had Mike Hightower talking about JEA, and we attempted to have the TPC out, and we ended up having a substitute speaker talk about the TPC, which then didn't actually take place. You kind of knew the year was going to go off track when that happened. We celebrated President's Day without a meeting. We brought Kent Justice in talking about truth in media. If you recall that seems like it was forever ago. And that was just back at the end of February. And then good old March came around, and we had Zed Smith of the Cordish Company with us. And that was a fascinating discussion because it was sort of ahead of its time. We found out after the fact that some of what he was sharing wasn't exactly supposed to be public information yet, I guess. And as you can see what's happened in the meantime, some of the plans we originally saw at the beginning of the year have finally been made public. And then the craziest circumstance, I invited Andy Thompson of the Northeast Florida Science Fair to come in, where he was talking about the science fair being canceled potentially here and all these changes. And then next thing you know, we're on hiatus and we're shut down, and we have not met in person again ever since that. But, you know, Meninak persevered, y'all. We stuck with it. Many thanks to those of you who helped make all of this possible and adopted and converted over here to the Zoom platform, really without even blinking, which was amazing. You know, we had Patrick come in right away with Synovus and start talking about the PPP loans and the options out there when it was brand spanking new. We were able to bring in an infectious disease expert, Dr. Vindis Cordera, Larry Celzo, Melanie Messer coming in clutch this year, bringing in all sorts of fantastic speakers, including Dr. Albert Lowe, UNF professor of economics, which was kind of leading up to us bringing in a couple other people from UNF over the year. We had Richard Haddon. We were able to feature some of our Meninaks this year. I can't think of the last time we featured one, not let alone 2 or 3 Meninaks in a year speaking to us. Richard Haddon got to talk to us about leading a remote workforce. And then we brought in Lori Boyer with the DIA, talking about their plans there, landing coming down, being fresh right there happening in front of our eyes. Who would have thought the landing coming down and all of this COVID pandemic all happening in the same year? We were able to bring Senator Aaron Bean in, which was fantastic. He was a hoot, and followed by Congressman John Rutherford. I mean, we've just had an incredible array of speakers this year. And then we continued on with the 24th Annual Scholarship Awards, like it was in person almost. The committee met, selected the scholarship recipients. They've all received their checks. We gave them the recognition they deserve. And by then we were already into Memorial Day, and we got to do something new. We got to invite another Meninak up, Dr. Todd Sack. I had no clue his involvement down there in that African village. Fantastic presentation. I believe that's also out there on Facebook. That happened to be one of our most well-attended meetings of the year. We've been averaging 35 to 40 guests at our meetings, which isn't too far off the average for lunch. We've been getting over 100 views, in some cases over 200 on our videos that we're sharing to Facebook. So I would say we're getting more participation and engagement now than we ever have, thanks to COVID and thanks to this pandemic and the fact that we're kind of forced to adopt this streaming technology. But Dr. Todd Sack's presentation, I'll never forget it. He gets the credit for bringing in the most number of international participants. I want to say, Kathy, shake your head up and down, 22, I think, people from outside of our area attended just to watch that. His presentation ended up being one of the most popular out there on Facebook. We then went local again. We brought Chris Hand in, talking about state and local response to COVID. We had John Phillips. I'll never forget that meeting, y'all. That's when we got hacked in, right, by some people. We had to start locking our own meetings down like we were in the middle of COVID. And some people tried to take over our meetings, but we did not let that happen for very long. They got one word in and they were long gone. So that was our most controversial speaker of the year, John Phillips, talking about civil rights of all things. And then we went back to the media, covered a lot of ground this year. Nate Monroe talking about his role with the Times Union and how he and the Times Union see their role at this point in 2020, 2021 as the asker of questions and the investigations that they do. And then we went to Ken Babby and we started talking about the shrimp who ended up having their season canceled. Didn't get to do our usual Meninak mixer there this year, but hopefully that will all be back next year. And by that point, we were in the 4th of July, which brings us full circle here to Dr. Greene, who we are just waiting to have jump into our meeting. We did feature her in July. I can't think of the last time we had the same speaker twice in a year. I also can't think of the last time we had a Duval County School Superintendent named the Florida Superintendent of the Year. So a lot of credit to her, and it will be great to hear what she has to say today, especially with our focus with Meninak and the youth here in our community. We had Dr. Elizabeth Ransom with Baptist Health talking about their dashboards, their COVID data, and their response of what was happening. And then our third Meninak we got to feature this year, Tiger Tari. Like, how about that? Who knew that story about Tiger and what he has been doing with racing on his own? If you don't follow him on Facebook, he has got quite the life out there racing his Porsche and Mazda vehicles. We went back, took a little break here in August, and we had Rena Coughlin come in of the Nonprofit Center. We had Ambassador Nancy Soderberg, who was predicting back in August the win by President-elect Biden. Agree or not with her, she ended up being correct after being incorrect prior to that, as she will be first to say. And I'll be very curious to see where Ambassador Soderberg ends up if she does take a role in this administration. I've not seen news of that, but I've been watching. And then we had Michael Bender of the UNF Public Opinion Lab, whose research turned out to be incredibly accurate, I think, in hindsight here this year. And then we went to Jacob Gordon with Downtown Vision. It brought us into September here. And I see Dr. Greene is joining us. Good to have you here, Dr. Greene. As soon as I see your mic and camera are ready, we will switch over to you and introduce you. But in September, y'all, which just doesn't seem that long ago, we had State Attorney Melissa Nelson talking to us about what they're doing with the gun lab and all of the other things to fight crime here, especially in light of the courts being shut down. We had Cole Pepper talking about sports. I'm sure he was not expecting the Jaguars to be almost winless still at this point, but here we are. And then we had our Charity Project Award. That went off without a hitch. Got to do another surprise presentation with them. And my understanding is that project is underway, and I will have an update, or Jim Love will, next year for you on that as well. And then we were able to feature Council President Tommy Azuri, former mayor. Was great to hear from him, and glad to see that he's recovering, all before the whole Lot J hit the ground running there in the media. We had all the insight that was happening. We had a former FBI agent, Chris Graham, talking about the McMillions scandal here that took place right in our backyard. Absolutely fascinating. If you haven't watched that series online, you got to check it out. We had Kent Thielen, VP and CEO of Mayo, which was fantastic. Hit some more healthcare topics. And then we had Captain Daniel Broadhurst of Hitron, which was an absolutely fantastic presentation. I had no idea what they were up to. We celebrated Veterans Day without a meeting, and then we brought in Dr. Terry Andrews and Cheryl Johnson of Baptist Behavioral Health talking about that impact. We had the mayor on just a couple weeks ago. We had our own little holiday virtual meeting with Jim Webb and Paul Gray and some others of Manifest Distilling and Hyperion Brewing and Carvaca. So really, really great, wild year here. Never would have thought it would have gone down like this, but I do see that Dr. Greene is right there ready to go. So let me go ahead and give Dr. Greene the introduction she deserves after kind of recapping the year here. It has been an honor and privilege to serve as your president of Meninak this year, and I look forward to many, many more years assisting all the future presidents and executive leadership. And I cannot thank Kathy enough for all of her work, just adopting and figuring this out with us. Like, Kathy, you are second to none. Thank you. All right. At this time, it is my honor and privilege now to introduce our speaker, myself. That is, of course, Duval County Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. Diana Greene, everyone, who just happened to be named Florida's 2021 Superintendent of the Year. How about that, everyone? Superintendent of the Year by the Florida Association of District School Superintendents. I'm not sure if she is the first to ever receive it here in Duval County, but Dr. Greene is the 33rd superintendent and the second African-American woman to receive this honor since the inception of the awards program in 1988. Congratulations, Dr. Greene. Dr. Greene leads us with compassion and conviction, driven by work ethic, grounded in servant leadership, and a commitment to educational excellence. Stated the FAD's president and Pinellas County School Superintendent, Dr. Michael Grigo. Her philosophy that the work of a superintendent and public educators has to be done as if there is no tomorrow, because we only get one chance with these kids. Isn't that the truth? Clearly exemplifies her dedication to public education. We are so proud of Dr. Greene. Her bold leadership has offered steady guidance for all of Team Duval during a very challenging year. And I can't think of anyone more deserving of this incredible honor. We know she will represent Duval and Florida well, said School Board Chairwoman Elizabeth Anderson. So just some of the quotes that are being said about Dr. Greene. You know, in this challenging year for students and educators, this is an affirmation of the incredible work that's happening right here in Duval County. It's an honor and privilege to have Dr. Greene here today with Meninak again. One of the very few speakers that we invite back twice in a year, Dr. Greene. So with that being said, thank you for joining us. I can't wait to hear your update and find out what your perspective has been with this first half of the school year coming to a close. Dr. Greene, everyone.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. I do have to apologize because this is actually the first Zoom meeting I've ever done in my house. I never do my work Zoom meetings in my house. I always do them in my office, but I had 3 straight Zoom meetings today, plus a meeting that's like less than 2 miles from my home. So I just took the liberty to say, oh, it's much quicker to do it this way. So I do apologize. Is there an opportunity for me to share my screen? I want to talk about where we are with COVID-19 and the impact on our schools. And I'd like to show our district dashboard.
Yep, you should be good now, Dr. Greene.
Okay. Hopefully you can see, this is our district dashboard. It actually updates every day after 8 p.m. As you can see, district-wide, we have a total of 649 cases. 199 are for staff, and staff can be anyone that works for DCPS. Students, 450 cases. With our district-wide map, you can, if I was to click on the map, I can see every school. And if I hover over that school, I can see how many cases have been reported at that school. On the side of the map, you can see the aggregate cases by school. And we'll just look at A. Philip Randolph. If you click on the button for any school, it'll show you how many total cases, how many this week. So staff or students, of course, today being Monday, you're going to see 0. It won't update until this evening. This month, they had 1 staff member. And for the year, it shows you the total, 3. So that is done for every single school. So our families can keep up to date. What does the COVID-19 caseload look like at their school? In addition to showing those numbers, we also can show it by school type. Greene being our high schools. High schools, as we predicted, would be our highest case totals, with middle behind, and then elementary behind, but middle in our combination schools. Our combination schools are either 612 schools or our K-8 schools. Middle school being the smallest. And for the most part, what we predicted is what's happening. Most of our cases are coming outside of the school district. We've only had 1 case where we know without a shadow of a doubt it came from the school, and that happened back in the month of August. And since then, we've not had any cases that can be tied back to the school itself. Many students are following everything we are asking them to do when they are at school. We really do not have an issue with our students wearing their facial coverings, doing the frequent hand washings, trying to stay 6 feet apart as much as possible. As you can imagine, high school students, that really is a challenge for them. That's why they have probably the highest numbers, but also they're the most mobile. When they leave school, many of them can go other places. Our elementary, middle school students, their mobility is kind of tied to their family for the most part. But our high school students, they're the group that we are constantly, I don't want to say preaching to, but constantly consulting and reminding them, when you're not at school, please wear your facial coverings, do your hand washing as frequently as possible, and try to stay 6 feet apart. You know, that if you think back to your high school days, there probably were less hours in a day that I wasn't closer than 6 feet to someone than hours in a day when I wasn't 6 feet, further than 6 feet apart from someone. But our high school students are doing a tremendous job, like I said, when they're at school. You can also see this chart by school board member district. And you might want to know, well, why is that important? Because we can see geographically, is there community spread? And it's actually District 2. It's out at the beaches. That's Elizabeth Anderson's district that we had the most cases. And you'll probably remember Fletcher High School was the one of two high schools we had to close down for 2 weeks. And that's probably a lot of the numbers related to District 2 is Fletcher High School. So far, since that closure, Fletcher has maintained really good numbers. It doesn't mean that they haven't had cases, but ensuring that students are following out what we have outlined at the school, it's been very strong. So we do utilize this dashboard a lot. We try to make sure that at least weekly, we are having conversations with the Department of Health to ensure that we are in alignment with what they're doing. I'm not sure whether you know this or not, but the CDC guidelines has now changed on being quarantined. In the past, it was 14 days. As of last week, now if a student or staff member has to be quarantined, it is for 10 days. So that has definitely played a role in our support for our schools, because our number one issue, if someone was to ask me, what's the number one concern you have right now? Our number one concern is substitutes. It is very challenging to get substitutes to come into our schools, whether it is, you know, they are at that age that they need to be concerned for COVID-19, or someone in their family may have COVID. It's very challenging to get a substitute into our schools. And so when teachers have to be quarantined, now it's 10 days, but it was 14 days that we had to ensure we had coverage for those classrooms. And sometimes it became challenging to ensure that we could have substitutes. But the amazing thing about Team Duval is our teachers have picked up the slack, and if we can't get a sub, our teachers are taking, splitting classes up and taking those students to ensure that we can continue our instructional continuity. And in some cases, we do have to close classrooms. You probably don't, I guess the news doesn't find that interesting anymore, so they don't report about it anymore. But there are times it is just easier to close the classroom and let the teacher instruct through Duval homeroom. So if we close a classroom, all the students go to Duval homeroom during that time period of being quarantined and until they return back to school. So COVID-19 also plays a role with our staff. We are one of only a handful of districts that has its own testing for employees. We have 8 testing sites. They're all high schools. Our employees, if they are exhibiting any of the symptoms, can simply get a form from their administrator. It's all drive-through, so they do not come into the building. The administrator texts the nurse at that location, whichever location they're going to, and they can drive up and the nurse can give them a PCR test. And our employees know their results most times within 5 hours, 24 hours at the most. So we have a very robust testing program for DCPS, and with our partnership with the city, our students and their families have priority lanes at all of the testing sites in Duval County. So if a student is in the isolation room, they get a form, their parent can come pick them up, and the parent and the child can go to that lane that is specifically designated for DCPS and get their testing relatively very quickly. Most families say within less than 5 minutes, they're in and they're out headed home, but their results they usually get them in 2 to 3 days. That's the difference between our student testing program and our staff testing program. We've been able to support our teachers. This is something that most people don't know. We pay all their medical expenses related to COVID-19. And I said teachers, it's all employees. We are very fortunate to be self-insured, and through our self-insurance program, we were able to provide that financial support, especially for our lowest paid employees. If any of them and any family member that is on our health insurance plan contracts COVID-19, we pay all medical expenses related to that disease. So we believe that we put in a very strong program to minimize and then address COVID-19. Actually, tomorrow we will be meeting with the Department of Health and see how the school district will actually play a role in the vaccine. We're not really sure what our role will be, but our goal is to, again, be a beacon not only to our students, but to our community. And I think the reason they are asking us to the table is, one, we have freezers on all of our campuses. So we might be asked to house vaccines for the community or for the Department of Health, but we'll see tomorrow what will be our role in supporting Department of Health with the vaccine. As you know, on November 3rd, we had the election, and our community so graciously voted to approve the school district's referendum for a half-penny sales tax, which goes in effect January 1st. We are real excited that the Independent Oversight Committee citizens they've been nominated. The board will be voting on that list of individuals who will have oversight for the half penny. We've already started moving in the direction of the sharing with the board phase 1, the first projects that will be coming out starting next year in 2021. Part of the referendum was to ensure that we had safety and security addressed at every single campus within the first 3 years. So safety and security is probably going to be the first projects that someone can lay their eyes on and see how we are progressing. We are also developing a dashboard for the referendum. So even if you're not on that independent oversight committee, you can see when that dashboard goes live, how the dollars are being spent. You can see what projects are currently being worked on and where they are in the progress of that project, and see how much has been spent on that project and the type, what the half cent is being spent on. If you want to know what we're doing over the next 15 years, I encourage you to go to the website, ourduvalschools.org. You can see the master's facilities plan for the entire 15 years. You can also see individual schools. So if you have a favorite school and you want to know what's happening with them, you just click on the name of that school and it opens up and tells you what projects are slated to be implemented at that particular school and how much of the half-cent sales tax funding is slated to be budgeted for those projects. We have quite a bit going on. We are also in the throes of returning what the state deems as return to school. The beginning of the school year, we had to submit a reopening plan to the Department of Education based on an executive order. Well, that executive order has been extended, but there has been changes to the executive order. So now we have to submit a spring opening plan. And that plan requires us to reach out to students who may be struggling, their families, and they are participating through Duval Homeroom. And reaching out to them, we are to encourage them to come back to brick and mortar. Currently today, over 10,000 students have requested to come back to brick and mortar. And so starting in January, our enrollment will be up well over 100,000 students inside of our schools, brick and mortar, with still about 25,000 of our students participating through Duval Homeroom. We will continue to work with our families, informing them. One, we think it's very important to make sure that parents know that they have a choice. even if their child is struggling and we feel it's in the best interest of the child to return to brick and mortar, they still have the opportunity to opt to stay in Duval homeroom. They just have to sign a form indicating that they know that their student is struggling and they know what areas they're struggling in, but they still have chosen to remain in Duval homeroom. So our goal after that is to continue to provide resources and support to those families, even if we know that it would be better for their child to be in brick and mortar. We're still now going to deliver their supports virtually or remotely, if you will, to them through Duval homeroom. The last thing I'd like to share is that even in the midst of a pandemic, we actually are seeing our best hiring season ever. And we're not sure how to explain that, because actually most districts are seeing their worst hiring season. This is the first time our vacancies has been below 200. Normally we have well over 200 vacancies at this time. And so I know this doesn't sound like a lot to other people, but our vacancies are now below 130. And for us, that is a win, because normally we're well over 200. This is the time of year where individuals, I don't know, maybe they start thinking and reflecting over their lives, but they tend to leave the school district about this time of the year, and that is not the case this year. We're very fortunate that whether people are afraid because of the pandemic that they don't want to leave their current job, they're staying with us, and as well as we see this as an opportunity to also start recruiting, because still many colleges are having their graduations right about now. And so we're hoping that we will have new teachers coming in January to help fill the 130 vacancies we have. But right now, we are one of the few urban school districts that are seeing people stay in brick and mortar, and that they are confident, at least I feel, in the school district's ability to ensure that they have their PPE, ensuring that we clean our schools, that they have access to hand sanitizer, which, by the way, we spend probably close to $70,000 just on hand sanitizer a month to ensure that we are making sure our students and our staff have access to that ability to, whether it's frequently wash your hands or frequently clean your hands. So with that, I would be more than happy to entertain questions, because I know that you have a certain amount of time, and I'll take any questions.
Dr. Greene, thank you so much for sharing that with us, sharing that dashboard with us. There are a number of questions. For those of you who want to ask questions, please feel free to use the hand raise feature. I will be happy to call on you. If you would rather text me the question or email it to questions@meninak.org. If you're unable to ask it yourself or don't want to, I'll gladly handle that as well. There's a lot of questions that have already been kind of teed up here, Dr. Greene. And the first one, which you haven't touched on, and it seems pretty newsworthy, is the news about possibly selling the South Bank headquarters for DCPS. What's the story there? That kind of took me by surprise. I didn't know if I missed something about that, but all of a sudden I saw that news. What's the rest of the story on that?
Well, the school board I'm probably got my school board meetings mixed up. Maybe it's the next school board meeting. The board will bring forth a resolution. That resolution requires me to come back to them in March with a plan on selling the main district administration office. I know that this has been a topic long before I became superintendent here, and one that will continue, that people want us to move off the river. I will share some of the challenges with us moving off the river. Number one, we own the property, we own the building. It's been appraised within the last 2 years, and that appraisal has come back, that it's worth building and property a little over $13 million. The challenge for us is moving will be much more than $13 million. For us to move to a new facility, whether that's one being built for us or taking an existing facility and having to renovate it, our costs that we've analyzed indicates that it would be probably closer to $30 million for us to move into another facility. So I will work, my team and I have already been working on it to determine what would be the next step or the best step. More than likely, it will lead us to look at an RFP or an RFQ kind of process. And once that is done, it doesn't mean that the district is selling the building. We're just coming with, here is the information, here's the best plan, here's what we people believe we can get for the building. But also note, if that is true and you truly are committed to us moving, here are also all the things that have to be in place for us to move. It's going to be very important that we are very transparent about this, because we cannot afford anyone thinking the half-cent sales tax has anything to do with this, because it doesn't. Even if we chose to move and if we chose to purchase something else, we would be using our current capital dollars or dollars that we receive from ad valorem taxes, the things that we normally receive. It would be those dollars. It would have nothing to do with the half-cent sales tax.
Thank you for
I
that.
gave you more information than you wanted.
No, that's fantastic information. We all know to pay attention the next few weeks, but I was curious how that was related to the half cent, and it's good to understand how it's not. Where do you see some of your challenges in 2021 and looking beyond into 2022, assuming that we move past the pandemic as expected with the vaccine? Where is your focus here challenge wise?
Probably our number one challenge is learning loss. The learning loss that has occurred since March of last school year, when we closed our doors to brick and mortar and went total remote. Right now, our data is telling that math is our number one content area where we're seeing the largest learning loss percentage-wise. And if someone asks, well, why is it math? Well, it's math because math is a building block content. You need to first make sure you master addition and subtraction before you jump over to multiplication and division. And we see that many students may have missed or had gaps in learning between March to date. But the good news is math is also the easiest content to accelerate, fix and accelerate it and move on. Our other areas, we are seeing some decline, but not nearly to the level of what we're seeing for math. And so the goal is, how do we get our students back to that level that we feel like, okay, we've made up that learning loss and moved even further ahead. So what many people think is, oh, just go back and remediate. It's not quite that simple, because as time keeps moving on, not only do we have to go back and fill in those gaps, we need to accelerate so that they can catch up where they should be. And so it is a process of burning the candle at both ends. We have to go and do some remediation, but at the same time, we have to figure out, how do we accelerate?
Thank you. I think it was earlier this year when the new state budget passed, the increase in salary here for new teachers. I really am not 100% clear how that ended up working out for existing teachers and all of those issues, which maybe you can touch on. But I'm also curious your perspective on if that's also helped you recruit better teachers and be more competitive, not just with other districts here in the state, but other states as well.
Well, currently, our union is in the middle of ratifying. So we have not implemented the new salary schedule as of yet, but that information is out with teachers. And once they ratify it, it will come back to the board. So hopefully in January, we will be bringing that item to the board to recommend for passing. Here's the part that I think most of the public does not understand. All of the dollars that we received, 80% has to just be spent on getting beginning teacher salary as high as we possibly can. The goal was to try to get to 47.5. We will not, I don't know many districts that would actually make the 47.5. For us, the highest it could get to would be $45,891. 80% has to be spent. 20% you were allowed to spend on other instructional positions that are not identified as classroom teachers. So social workers, they're not identified as classroom teachers, or media specialists, guidance counselors. So the other 20% we use to get those individuals to that same level as well. Or pre-K teachers, they're not considered in the classroom teacher because pre-K is outside of K-12. Just a little history there. So most of the dollars went to increasing beginning teacher pay. Your veteran teachers were not in that bill. Anything that veteran teachers are getting, it's coming from the school district. And we're probably one of the few school districts that tried to do a little bit with our veteran teachers, but nowhere to the tune of our beginning teachers. And I think a lot of people don't understand that the salary of $45,891, that's a 13-year teacher. So now all of the teachers from year 0 to year 13, they're now all making the same dollar amount. So a 13-year veteran is making the same as their teacher next door who might only have 2 years of experience. So you can imagine the discontent a little bit there, and that we have to figure out how we can support all of our teachers, because our data tells us if teachers are 14 years and above, they're generally in our A and B schools. Our lower performing schools generally have teachers who have much less experience. And so experience does matter, and we need to honor that experience and figure out a way, how do we do this equitably? I'm sorry, none of your questions I can give just easy answers. I'll try to find, give me an easy question where I just say one sentence and then I'm done.
You don't have an easy job, Dr. Greene, but talk about a math and morale problem. Maybe Melanie Messer here does. Melanie, go right ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Greene, for your leadership, and congratulations again on your recognition. I wanted to ask about best practices from this pandemic that you hope to continue beyond, let's say, once we've gotten, the majority of the kids back into school.
I think one thing that I hope we continue is our ability to connect with families through technology. We're having this meeting. Now parents can have parent-teacher conferences. I'm at home and now we can connect. So this alternate connection is something that I hope that we can build upon and continue to have with our families. It makes it, our families are working, some of them have 2 and 3 jobs. And the fact that, I can just send you this invite, and on your phone, if you can get 5 minutes of time away from your work, you and I can have a quick parent-teacher conference. So that's one thing I hope we can continue.
Thank you, Melanie. A couple more questions. We are running short on time, everyone. So if you have anything else you want to get out there, please let me know right away. I'll give you a toss-up easy question. You probably don't even have the answer yet, I'm afraid, but plans for graduation this year. Last year, for those of you who aren't parents, who aren't connected, they went back to graduation at most schools, right at the stadiums for most part. So I think some schools still went to common facilities, but I'm curious if there was enough positive response from that it will continue, or if you see things going back to the way they were prior years.
Oh, I can answer that. we're probably going to do a combination. Even though graduation is not for 4 or 5 months, cost for indoor facilities has gone up tremendously. And to use the ViStar auditorium probably is going to cost quite a bit more than what we paid in the past. So we may look at some outdoor. It really is going to depend on the size of the graduating class. Unless the vaccine has just been distributed and pretty much almost everyone in Duval has been vaccinated, we still will have to implement the strategies 6 feet apart, wearing facial coverings, all the checking temperatures and hand sanitizer. We still will have to do all of that probably this upcoming year. If everything gets fixed and it goes away, we still may do some more outdoor ceremonies, and it really will be if we can't get that cost down. I mean, we went from $26,000 for one graduation to last year it was like $50,000 for one. And so when you're talking about 22 high schools that we graduate every year, that cost adds up.
That's a lot of hand sanitizer right there is what I'm thinking. Last and final question. You sort of hinted on it while you were chatting, but your dashboard's not showing it. How is this district, how's Duval County Schools comparing to other districts in the state, both from the COVID response standpoint and other factors that you compare against?
I mostly compare us to the other we're called the Big Seven. We're the 7 largest districts in the state of Florida. Our numbers are better than most of our Big 7 counterparts, but it's also, when you're the Big 7, when you have Miami-Dade, Broward, they just got into being in stage 3 with the rest of us. So one of the reasons we think our numbers are better is that we had the highest percentage of students in brick and mortar very early in the school year. So our students being comfortable being in the same location with each other, us doing the hybrid. We're the only district in the state of Florida who implemented a hybrid, a high school and middle school, that our numbers didn't jump out there as quickly because of the hybrid. Our numbers exploded right after we were required to stop utilizing the hybrid. And so we think those are the reasons why our numbers aren't percentage-wise as high as some of the other districts.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for your time today. And congratulations on behalf of everyone here at Meninak on being selected as the 2021 Superintendent of the Year here in the state of Florida. Dr. Greene, we really appreciate your time and leadership.
Thank you.
All right, fellow Meninaks, that is going to wrap up our meeting. I would like to thank Melanie Messer for our invocation this morning. Would like to thank all of my Meninaks who participated this year in our programs here virtually, or those that were in person earlier. Can't thank you enough, could not have done it without you. For those of you who are volunteering still and able to, we do have our bell ringing coming up on Friday, December 18th at the Roosevelt and Town Center Publixes. There's still a few openings left. Please reach out to Kathy. And of course, if you want to help count the money, we are always looking for help. Kirk Lewis is always looking for volunteers to help facilitate the counting of the money at the Salvation headquarters every weekday morning. Our next meeting won't be until next year. Finally, 2021 is just around the corner, everyone. January 11th, we will be having our very own change of command. President-elect Jim Love will be taking over this spot, and I will be here to serve him and all of you and continue on this great Meninak tradition, everyone. It has been an absolute wild year. I hope to see all of you in person more next year. I can't say that enough, everyone. We hope that you all stay healthy through the end of the year and that you have a fantastic New Year's and holiday season as well. To kind of close things out, we're going to roll with our Meninak song here at the end today, and then we're going to follow that up with the national anthem. So at this moment, if we could please have a silent prayer for peace and health, everyone. Thank you, and have a great rest of 2020.